Warning. This video contains spoilers for the Chainsaw Man manga and Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Watch the Chainsaw Man and Venom sections of this video at your own risk.
So, you guys really seem to enjoy my last video where I went over 5 guest fighters that I thought would be perfect for Mortal Kombat 1. Since you guys seem to enjoy that video so much, I decided to come up with 5 more guest fighters that I feel would be perfect for Mortal Kombat 1. This time around, I decided to curate a list of characters who made their debut in the world of comics. The reason I'm doing this specifically is because some of the people in the comments of my last video brought up the excellent point that the guest fighters in previous Mortal Kombat games all seem to follow a specific theme. For Mortal Kombat X, the theme was horror. For Mortal Kombat 11, it was mostly 80s action heroes. And for Mortal Kombat 1, the theme seems to be comic book characters, at least in terms of Combat Pack 1. So yeah, that's why this video will be focusing exclusively on comic book characters. Something that I mentioned in my last video that I want to reiterate here is that I'm an ideas guy, not a programmer. So don't expect me to go in depth about these characters' movesets, combos, balancing, blah blah blah. You get the idea. But before we begin, I quickly want you guys to scroll down and comment who you think would make a perfect cameo fighter in Mortal Kombat 1. They don't necessarily have to be a guest fighter, they can just as easily be an underrated or otherwise forgotten character from the Mortal Kombat franchise. And while you're down there, maybe consider leaving a like and subscribing. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate the support. Alright, now that that's all said and done, let's finally get this video started with our first guest fighter on the list.
You put the dick in predictable and went for my head like a dipshit!
Having grown up in poverty and eventually inheriting his father's debt, a young boy, known simply as Denji, would have his life forever changed upon meeting a literal devil known as Pachita. When Denji was brought to the brink of death, he made a deal with Pachita that would see the Chainsaw Devil fuse their hearts together, turning Denji into the entity known as the Chainsaw Man. A lot of the people in the comments of my last Mortal Kombat 1 video brought up Denji as one of their most wanted guest fighters. While my knowledge of Chainsaw Man is admittedly pretty limited, I can definitely see why people are so eager to see this character added to MK1. Denji's chainsaw powers would definitely lend themselves well to Mortal Kombat 1's gameplay, as they could lead to some seriously painful looking combos and special moves. Imagine a mix between Baraka and Leatherface from MKX. During my research in the Chainsaw Man for this section of the video, I learned that Denji apparently needs blood to feel his chainsaw form. I think it'd be really awesome if this quirk of his was adapted into his gameplay. Maybe it could work similar to Johnny Cage's star power meter, but instead of starting out empty, it would start out full, and every time you would get hit, the meter would empty, causing Denji to do less and less damage over time. And in order to fill it, you'd obviously have to successfully damage your opponent. As for Denji's fatalities, there's a lot of kills from the manga and anime that they could take inspiration from. I think one of his fatalities should be a modified version of the way he kills the Katana Man. Maybe he'd simply grow a chainsaw in his leg and then deliver a swift kick to the nuts. Another fatality could be based on how Denji kills Makima in the manga. From what I can tell, it's an iconic moment, so not including it would feel like a huge missed opportunity. It's honestly kind of shocking that NetherRealm Studios hasn't included a character from a manga or anime series in one of their games yet. I think that Denji would be a really good starting point for them, given the character's massive rise in popularity in the past year or so, plus the fact that his abilities are basically tailor-made for Mortal Kombat. Whether or not the character actually has a chance of being added into the game remains to be seen. Because I can just as easily see NetherRealm going with someone more popular like, I don't know, Eren from Attack on Titan or Guts from Berserk. Well, regardless of who they pick, if any, all 3 of these characters have a good chance of being added to the game, unlike the next character on this list.
You know, it would be nice just to have your support, just for once.
Catch up!
In the Marvel Comics universe, deep within the far reaches of space, there lies a planet known as Clintar. On this planet, a race of extraterrestrial aliens, known as symbiotes, are born. These aliens have the unique ability to bond with a host's body, resulting in a symbiotic partnership and the birth of a monster. One of these symbiotes, Venom, was banished from the planet Clintar, where it eventually found its way to Earth. After some shenanigans with the superhero Spider-Man, Venom would eventually bond with a man known as Eddie Brock, the two becoming virtually inseparable from that point forward. There's a lot of Marvel characters I could have chosen for this list. Some of you guys mentioned some potential candidates, like the Punisher, Wolverine, and Daredevil. However, I decided to pick Venom for a couple different reasons. First off, I think that the character's powers could lend themselves well to an incredibly complex moveset. Where Venom would really shine would be with their symbiote abilities, something that allows their whole body to operate as a weapon. They could form tendril-like attacks, giant waves of symbiote goo that could surge across the ground, and even oversized weapons. I can also see them being relatively agile, allowing for some pretty good rushdown moves, as well as escape options. Another reason why I specifically chose Venom for this list is, can you imagine just how spectacular their interactions with the rest of the MK1 cast would be? Like, a lot of people seem to forget that Venom is a goofball who goes out of his way to crack jokes and make fun of people.
Jump. Pussy.
And the idea of him roasting characters like Shao Kahn and Omni-Man just sounds wonderful. Not to mention both Venom and Eddie Brock would be interacting with the MK cast, leading to two completely different characters giving their thoughts on the opponents that they're going up against. And finally, Venom's fatalities could take inspiration from the Venom films. I'm thinking that one of their fatalities would take inspiration from the SWAT fight scene, specifically when they do this. And their second fatality would, of course, involve the symbiote biting off the head of their opponent, being more of a cinematic fatality rather than an over-the-top bloody one. Venom is easily my favorite Marvel Comics character of all time, so I would be absolutely ecstatic to see them in a game like Mortal Kombat.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Look, we need to address the obvious pink elephant in the room, that being the fact that Venom is owned by Marvel Comics, which is owned by Disney. Mortal Kombat was created by NetherRealm Studios, which is owned by Warner Brothers. Yeah, you probably see where I'm going with this. Look, I'm not going to say it's impossible for Venom to get into Mortal Kombat 1 just because these two companies are rivals. A lot of people thought that Disney wouldn't dare let Sora in the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and yet he got in. But with that being said, I don't know. I just don't see it happening. At least, not for Mortal Kombat 1. Maybe if there weren't 3 other comic book characters from rivaling companies, one of them being Marvel's biggest competitor, being added to the game, then maybe Venom would have stood a chance. But yeah, no, I don't think so. But that's gonna do it for the Venom section of this video. So far on the list, we've had one character that has some chance of getting into the game, and one who doesn't have any chance. I think it's about time we went over a character who has an incredibly great chance of being added to the game, given his arch rivals were already added into a previous NetherRealm Studios game.
Bring me the Shredder.
Clad in a suit of armor and wielding deadly wrist blades, Oroku Saki, aka the Shredder, is the ruthless leader of the ninja organization known as the Foot Clan. A master of martial arts and considered one of the world's deadliest assassins, the Shredder is the arch nemesis of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and easily one of the most recognizable comic book villains of all time. Shredder was another character that I saw a lot of people asking for in the comments of my last Mortal Kombat video, and I think that has to do with the fact that the Ninja Turtles were guest fighters in another NetherRealm Studios game, Injustice 2. Having Shredder appear in Injustice's older, more violent brother would just feel right. Shredder's ninja abilities and merciless behavior would make him a perfect fit for the world of Mortal Kombat. He'd be on the same level as characters like Scorpion and Sub-Zero in terms of fighting abilities, and he'd match characters like Shao Kahn and Reiko in terms of bloodlust and attitude. I also think that Shredder would lend himself well to some pretty incredible looking skins. There's a lot of appearances that NetherRealm could take inspiration from, whether it be his appearance in the comics, the 1987 cartoon show, the 1990 live-action movie, or hell, maybe even the 2014 movie. NetherRealm is usually pretty good at perfectly recreating the look of their crossover characters, so whichever appearance they decide to go with, it'll probably look perfect. The only fatality I can think of for Shredder off the top of my head would be a move inspired by the ancient technique he uses against Batman in the Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover movie, and it would visually be very similar to Shujenko's fatality. I don't have much more to say regarding Shredder, as I feel he's one of those characters that kind of speaks for himself. He's a ninja master, he's deadly, he's mean, I mean, what more could you ask for? In terms of his chances of getting into Mortal Kombat 1, I think he has the best chance at getting added to the game out of anyone on this list, given that NetherRealm Studios has already put the Turtles in another one of their fighting game series. Time will tell if they end up adding him to the game, or if they just decide to save him for something like Injustice 3. I don't know how to transition to the next section of this video, so yep.
It's party time! P-A-R-T. Why? Because I gotta!
Now, I'm not exactly sure how to approach this next section of the video, given the fact that the mask isn't really one singular character. You see, the mask, also known as Big Head in some cases, is a title given to whoever wears a magical mask that transforms said wearer into a reality-bending monster. While the mask has the ability to transform its wearer into a superpowered individual, they will slowly lose their sanity and resort to ultra-violent tactics to deal with situations. Sounds like a perfect fit for Mortal Kombat. There have been multiple people who have become the mask over the years, but the one you're probably familiar with most is Stanley Ipkiss, as he was the main character in the 1994 film, being played by none other than Jim Carrey. I'm going to work under the assumption that NetherRealm Studios would have Stanley be their mask if they ever added him to Mortal Kombat 1, the comic version, not the Jim Carrey version, though I imagine they take inspiration from the film, too. Anyways, the mask would be quite the wild card when it comes to his moveset. I think this is where NetherRealm should take inspiration from both the movie and the comics, regarding his abilities. That is to say, his moveset should consist of attacks that are reminiscent of classic cartoon characters, like in the movie, and more brutal, deadly options, such as guns and bombs, like in the comics. Think of him playing like a more unhinged version of Joker from Mortal Kombat 11. I'd love to see his fatalities take inspiration from scenes from the film, just modified to be more violent in nature. I'm thinking of the scenes where the mask makes balloon animals for street thugs, as well as the one where he flushes Dorian Tyrell down the drain. I think if NetherRealm Studios were to play their cards right, the mask could be Mortal Kombat 1's equivalent of Steve from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That is to say, he'd be an unorthodox character with a unique moveset and unique animations to match. I also think that he has a pretty good chance of getting added to the game. The mask is currently owned by Dark Horse Comics, and NetherRealm has already worked with them when they brought Hellboy into Injustice 2. I'm sure Dark Horse would jump at the opportunity to work with NetherRealm again, especially for a Mortal Kombat game. But that's going to do it for this portion of the video. We have one last character to go over before it ends, and he just so happens to be my most desired character from Mortal Kombat 1.
You shouldn't smoke these. They'll kill you.
Eric Draven is a tragic case. He had the one thing most of us truly desire in this world, companionship. But that was all ripped away from him when he and his wife were senselessly tortured and murdered. While Eric's wife would ultimately remain dead, Eric himself would be resurrected, taking on the persona of the Crow in order to take revenge against the ones who cut his and his wife's lives so short. Before we continue, I want to establish that while I may be using footage from the film and describing certain scenes from it, I'd want the Crow to be based on his comic book appearance, not his film appearance. Don't get me wrong, the film is fantastic. It's one of my favorite films of all time, but the last thing I'd want to see is Brandon Lee's likeness in a game where people are regularly ripped in half. Maybe the Crow could have a skin that resembled his movie counterpart, but that's about it. Alright, sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. Anyways, in my eyes, the Crow has a lot of similarities to Todd McFarlane's Spawn. That is to say, both are anti-heroes with tragic backstories, brought back from the dead by a higher force in order to exact vengeance upon the scumbags of the world. I mean, honestly, that reason alone should be enough to qualify the Crow a position on the Mortal Kombat 1 roster. The potential interactions between Eric and characters like Shao Kahn and Havoc, and even more sympathetic characters like Baraka and Reptile, is something I'd love to see. But of course, interactions aren't everything. For Eric's moveset, I imagine he'd have a healthy dose of both hand-to-hand combat moves, as well as knife-based moves. He'd also come equipped with dual handguns, given that he was shown to be quite the gunslinger in both the comics and the film. And of course, he'd also incorporate his trusty Crow into his moveset, using it as a summable projectile attack. I think if I had to make a comparison to how he'd play like a mixture of Cassie Cage and Quan Chi's summoner variant from MKX, specifically the Netherrealm Bat summoning moves. And finally, the Crow's first fatality would be based on how Eric dies in the film, starting with the opponent being shot twice, followed by them falling to their death. Their second fatality would be based on how the thug Tintin dies, and would feature the Crow jabbing multiple knives into his opponent's chest. Like I said beforehand, the Crow is probably my most wanted Mortal Kombat guest fighter. I just think his whole aesthetic, his backstory, his potential character interactions, and his moveset potential would all just be perfect for a game like Mortal Kombat. I remember seeing a tweet a while ago where someone asked if Ed Boon could add the Crow to Mortal Kombat 11, to which Ed said that the Crow actually scares him. So at the very least, Ed knows that there exists a demand for this devil. But with that being said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. For those of you who made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much. It truly helps me and the channel out a ton. Let me know in the comments if the characters I picked this time around were better or worse than the characters I picked for my first Mortal Kombat 1 video. If you like this video, leave a like, and if you want to see more crossover-based content like this in the future, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell. And yeah, like I said, that's going to do it, and until next time, I'll see you in the next one.